Chapter 1. The Illusion of Perfection. Maya had always been a force to be reckoned with. She was stunning, confident, and carried herself with an air of elegance that made everyone stop and take notice. She didn't just live life, she dominated it. I was no exception. When I met her, I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. She was everything I thought I wanted in a woman. Intelligent, ambitious, and charming, with a quick wit that kept me on my toes. We were perfect together, or so I believed. When we married, I thought my life was set. I had a beautiful wife, a solid job, and we lived in a house that others could only dream of. Maya always seemed to know how to make everything appear flawless. The dinners with friends, the weekends away, the perfect vacations. It was as if our life was curated for social media, with every moment looking like it was pulled from a magazine cover. There was never any sign of cracks in the surface. But I should have known. No marriage, no relationship can stay perfect forever. And one day, without any warning, the walls began to crumble. Started small. Little things that seemed insignificant at first. Maya being a little more distracted than usual, answering phone calls late at night with the door closed, and spending more time on her phone than with me. I tried to ignore it, convinced that I was just being paranoid. She was busy after all. She had a demanding career, and I knew that sometimes stress could make her retreat into herself. But then came the night I would never forget. It was a Wednesday. I had come home early from work, hoping to surprise Maya with dinner. I wanted to make things special, to remind her that I was still the man she had married, the man who loved her with all his heart. But when I opened the door, something felt off. The house was unusually quiet, and the faint sound of Maya's voice drifted down the hallway. It wasn't the normal kind of voice you use when you're on the phone with a friend or family member. It was softer, almost flirtatious. I felt a strange knot form in my stomach as I walked toward the source of the sound. I hesitated outside the door to our bedroom, where I could hear her talking. Her words were muffled, but I caught enough to know that she was speaking to someone who was not me. "I can't stop thinking about you," she said, her voice low and breathy. "Every time I close my eyes, it's like you're right here with me." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. The room spun, and for a second I wasn't sure if I had heard what I thought I had. But I wasn't mistaken. The words echoed in my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I can't stop thinking about you." I stood frozen, torn between confronting her immediately and walking away. But in that moment I knew. She was cheating. She had betrayed me. I couldn't bring myself to go in. Instead, I quietly stepped back, retreating to the kitchen to try and collect my thoughts. I needed to process what I had just overheard. My wife, my beautiful, perfect wife, was having an affair. I never thought I'd be in this position. I had always trusted her. How could she do this to me? After what felt like an eternity, Maya emerged from the bedroom, her face lighting up when she saw me. She didn't know I had heard anything. She didn't know I had overheard her confession. She kissed me on the cheek and went straight to the kitchen to greet me, her usual smile plastered on her face. "Hey, you're home early," she said casually, as though nothing had happened. "I was thinking we could grab a bite to eat, maybe go out for a drink later?" But I couldn't respond. I couldn't bring myself to speak. I just stood there, staring at her. The anger was building inside me, but it was mixed with something else, betrayal. I had given her everything, and this is how she repaid me. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing the cold silence. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, but I could see the hint of nervousness beneath her calm facade. She was trying to play it off, to act like nothing was amiss, but the guilt was there, hanging in the air between us. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. How could I even begin to confront her about what I had overheard? Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, heading straight for our bedroom. I pulled her phone from her bedside table, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to do this, but I needed answers. I had to know who had stolen my wife's heart. The screen lit up as I unlocked it. The first message I saw made my blood run cold. "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. I miss you so much." Don't worry about Jack, he'll never know. He's too busy to notice. The words burned into my mind. He'll never know. That was it. The confirmation I needed. My wife had been seeing someone behind my back for months, lying to me, deceiving me. I stood there, paralyzed, holding her phone in my trembling hands. I felt the weight of everything, the years of trust, of love, of loyalty, crushing down on me. It had all been a lie. She had destroyed me. But what she didn't know was that this wasn't the end. It wasn't the end of us. This was just the beginning. I was going to make her feel every ounce of the pain I was feeling. She had chosen to cheat. Now I would make her regret it. Chapter 2. The calm before the storm. I spent the next few days in a haze. I couldn't think straight. My mind was overwhelmed with anger, confusion, and the gut-wrenching pain of betrayal. Every time I looked at Maya, I felt a sense of disgust. How could she do this to me? How could someone who I thought loved me so deeply lie to my face for months? But in all the chaos swirling in my mind, one thought kept coming back to me. I had to get back at her. The anger within me was growing. Rage at her betrayal, and at the man she had thrown herself into. I had to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. But I knew I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just confront her right away. That wouldn't be enough. She needed to feel every second of the deception she had weaved. She needed to know that the consequences of her actions wouldn't just be something she could brush off with an apology or a few tears. I spent my days pretending everything was fine, playing the role of the husband who didn't know. Every time she kissed me, every time she smiled at me, I wanted to scream. But I kept my composure, hiding the fact that I was already planning my revenge. Maya didn't know it yet, but her world was about to come crashing down. It was Friday night when I decided to act. Maya had made plans to go out with her friends, and I knew she'd be gone for a few hours. She'd mentioned it earlier that day, excited about a night out. I'd never been one to care much about her social life. I'd always trusted her. But tonight I was going to use that to my advantage. I called up an old friend of mine, Tom. He and I had gone way back, before Maya, before the perfect life I thought we had. Tom had always been a man of action, someone who didn't hesitate when it came to getting things done. He owed me a favor, and tonight I was calling it in. "Tom," I said when he answered the phone. "I need you to help me with something." "Anything, man. What's up?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the curiosity in it. "I need you to find out everything you can about a guy named Chris. He's someone my wife's been seeing behind my back." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Tom processing my words. "Are you serious?" he finally asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice cold. "I'm not asking for information on him for any reason other than to make him regret ever getting involved with her. I'll get on it tonight. Don't worry, Jack. I'll find everything you need." "Thanks," I said, hanging up before he could say anything else. With the call made, I turned my attention to the next part of my plan. I went through Maya's things again, looking for anything I could use to my advantage. I found a few more texts from Chris, ones that showed how deep their affair had gone. They had been talking about trips, future plans, even vacations they'd taken together. The more I read, the angrier I got. She had truly made a fool of me. But I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted to expose her. I wanted her to see how easy it was for her to destroy the trust we'd built. She would be the one left humiliated, knowing that I had taken everything from her. The perfect life, the perfect image, the perfect marriage. As I sat there in the living room, watching the minutes tick by, a dark satisfaction began to settle in. I wasn't just plotting revenge. I was taking control. I would show her just how much power I had. How much I could hurt her the way she had hurt me. Around midnight, Maya left to meet her friends. She kissed me goodbye, her lips brushing mine like everything was normal. But I knew better. I knew that behind her smile, behind the act, she was hiding something I would make her regret. The moment she was out the door, I sprang into action. I grabbed my phone and sent Tom a quick message. "Meet me at the bar in an hour." I need to know everything about Chris. Then I set to work. First, I logged into Maya's social media accounts. I knew her passwords, of course. She never bothered to hide anything from me before. As I scrolled through her Instagram and Facebook, I could see the facade she had been building. Her posts, the photos of us on vacations, the smiling selfies, the perfect happy life we had shared for years. But there was more beneath the surface. There were photos of her and Chris, taken in places I had never been, at times I didn't know about. Made my stomach churn. With one click, I downloaded every photo, every message, every trace of her betrayal. I wasn't just going to expose her to me. I was going to expose her to everyone. I had a plan now. A carefully crafted, painful plan. And Maya didn't even know the storm that was about to hit her. As I leaned back in the chair, staring at the photos of her with Chris, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about regaining control. Maya had thought she could have it all, me and him and everyone else who didn't know the truth. But now I was the one holding the power. By the time the night ended, everything would change. Chapter 3. The Calm Before the Reckoning. The next day, Maya was unusually cheerful, completely oblivious to the storm that had been brewing just beneath the surface. She came home from her girls' night out, fresh-faced, with her makeup lightly smudged and the usual glow of excitement in her eyes. The kind of excitement that comes from sneaking around behind someone's back. "Hey, babe," she greeted me as she entered, tossing her purse on the couch with a carefree smile. "You wouldn't believe the fun we had. You should have come." I didn't answer immediately. My mind was replaying the images on her phone, of her and Chris, so carefree, so in love, while I was left in the dark, trusting her. I could barely keep my composure, but I had to. The game was far from over. Instead of responding, I simply gave her a quiet smile, masking the rage simmering inside me. I wanted to scream, to tear into her with every word I had, but I knew better. Anger would only cloud my judgment. This needed to be methodical, carefully calculated. I watched her as she made her way to the kitchen to grab something to eat. There was no trace of guilt in her demeanor. She was either a better liar than I had imagined, or she genuinely thought I wouldn't find out. Either way, it didn't matter. Her world was about to come crashing down, and I was the one holding the hammer. It was then that I received the text from Tom. I grabbed my phone from the table and opened the message. It was short and to the point as always. "I found everything. Meet me tonight." That was all I needed to know. Tom had done his job. The man who had been sleeping with my wife was about to feel the consequences of his actions. I couldn't wait to see the look on Chris's face when he realized just how deep the hole he had dug for himself was. "I think I'm going to head out for a while," I said casually, leaning back in my chair. Maya looked up from the kitchen, pausing as she wiped her hands on a towel. "Where are you going?" she asked, sounding a little too curious. I didn't even bother looking her way. I didn't owe her any explanations anymore. "Just out for a drink. I'll be back later." She didn't push. I left the house, leaving behind the woman I had trusted, the woman who had torn my heart apart. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, and for a second I felt a sense of clarity. This was it, the beginning of the end. The bar was dimly lit, the low hum of conversation blending with the clinking of glasses and the occasional laughter that filled the space. Tom was already seated at a corner booth when I arrived. He looked up as I approached, giving me a knowing nod. "Here you go," Tom said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. My fingers twitched with anticipation as I grabbed it. The contents inside were exactly what I needed. Every scrap of information about Chris, his past, his relationships, his personal life, it was all there. It was more than enough to ruin him. "I took it a step further," Tom added with a grin, his eyes glinting. "I got his home address, his work schedule, even some of his family history. Thought you'd want all the details." I sat back in the booth, digesting the new information. This wasn't just about Maya anymore. This was about destroying the illusion that Chris had built, making him feel the weight of his choices. "I'll make sure he knows exactly who he's messing with," I muttered under my breath, the wheels in my mind already turning. Tom raised his glass, a mischievous smile creeping onto his face. I think this is going to be a fun night. I smiled back, but my thoughts were already on the next step. Chris had crossed a line, and now it was time for him to pay the price. Maya wouldn't just lose me. She would lose everything. Chapter 4. The message delivered. The next few days felt like an eternity. Maya was trying harder than ever to act as if nothing was wrong. She'd started planning dinner dates, talking about trips we should take in the future. But I couldn't stomach it. Every word she spoke felt like a slap to my face. I kept playing along, pretending I was still that trusting husband who believed in her. But I wasn't, and she would soon realize just how much things had changed. On Monday afternoon, as I sat in my office, staring at the file on my desk, everything I had learned about Chris, I got a call from Tom. "I've set it up," Tom said. "He's in the bar tonight at 8. Alone." It was time. I couldn't wait any longer. I had spent enough time stewing in my pain, gathering the pieces to put the puzzle together. Tonight, everything would come to light. I made my way to the bar, my heart pounding with anticipation. As soon as I walked in, I spotted Chris immediately, sitting at the same table where I'd met Tom days before, a drink in his hand and a confident smile on his face. He didn't see me at first, but I saw him, and it felt good knowing that soon he would understand what it felt like to be exposed. I walked up to his table, deliberately taking my time. His face lit up when he saw me. "Jack," he said, his voice smooth, casual. "What's going on, man? Haven't seen you in a while." I took a deep breath and pulled out the chair, sitting down across from him. His smile faltered just for a second, but he quickly recovered. "I know what you've been doing," I said, leaning in close, my voice low. "I know about you and Maya." His eyes widened, his hand freezing mid-sip. For the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but I could hear the tension in his voice. "I'm talking about your little affair with my wife," I replied, watching the color drain from his face. "You've been screwing around behind my back for months, haven't you?" He looked around the bar, as if hoping someone would come to his rescue. But it was too late. I had already sent the evidence, the pictures, the texts, to his wife. She was already on her way here. Chris stood up suddenly, his face flushed with panic. "Look, Jack, this isn't what it seems." Before he could finish his sentence, the door opened and his wife walked in. The look on her face was one of disbelief, but it quickly turned to anger when she saw Chris standing there. "Chris," she shouted, her voice trembling. "How could you do this to me?" The tension in the room was palpable. It felt like the world was spinning, but I just sat there, watching it all unfold. Chris was now facing the consequences of his actions. Not just from me, but from the woman he had betrayed. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a sense of relief. Chapter 5: The Fallout. Chris's wife stormed toward him, her face twisted with fury. She didn't say a word at first, just stood there, staring at him as if she were trying to comprehend what she had just walked into. The silence between us was thick, heavy. You could almost hear the weight of the truth pressing down on them both. "Sherry, wait, this isn't," Chris started, his voice shaking, but his words fell flat. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by panic. His eyes darted between me and Sherry, like he was looking for some way out of this mess. But there was no escape. Not now. "You," Sherry spat, her hands trembling as she clenched them into fists. How long have you been lying to me? To us?" Chris looked over at me for a moment, his eyes pleading. He probably thought I would back down or offer him some kind of mercy. But I didn't come here to show him any compassion. I had seen enough, heard enough, of his deceit to know that this was the moment for everything to come crashing down. "She's known for a while," I said, the words slipping out without hesitation. "You can't hide from this anymore, Chris. Your wife deserves the truth." Sherry's eyes flickered to me, and then to Chris, her expression full of hurt and disbelief. "How could you do this to me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I've loved you. I've trusted you. And you've been sleeping with her." I could feel the weight of her gaze, and it was clear she was looking at me like I was the source of her pain. But this wasn't about me. This was about Chris, his lies, and his betrayal. "Please," Chris said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's just talk about this." I shook my head. "It's too late for that." Sherry stepped forward, her face red with fury. "You don't get to talk your way out of this, Chris. You've crossed a line that can't be undone." His expression faltered, and for a moment, he looked like a man on the brink of collapse. He glanced at me again, eyes pleading for a way to get out of the mess he had created. But there was no way out for him. Not now. Sherry didn't waste another second. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, quickly dialing a number. "Mom, you won't believe this. I need you to come pick me up." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I'm done. I'm leaving him." My heart sank, but I didn't feel pity for Chris. I didn't feel any sympathy for the mess he had made. He had made his bed, and now he was going to lie in it. There was no escaping the truth now. I watched as Sherry walked out of the bar, her head held high, even as her emotions threatened to break through. I could see the finality in her actions, and I knew Chris was left standing there, crushed. He didn't even try to follow her. He just stood there, defeated. It wasn't long before the bar started to empty. People murmured amongst themselves, casting furtive glances at the scene that had just unfolded. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. This was my moment. This was my revenge. Chris sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, slipping my jacket on and walking toward the door. Before I left, I turned back one last time to look at him. He was broken, and it felt good. When I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a sense of power and control that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maya's betrayal had shattered something in me. But now, seeing Chris lose everything in an instant, it was as if a part of me had been restored. He was no longer the one in control. The tables had turned. Chapter 6. The first shocks. The next few days were a whirlwind, everything happening in a blur. It felt like the world around me was moving in slow motion while I was caught in the eye of a storm that I had been too blind to see coming. I hadn't expected Chris to break so easily, nor had I expected Sherry to leave him so swiftly. It all felt too easy, too quick. But that wasn't the end of it. No, the real chaos was still to come. I knew that Maya would eventually find out what I had done. She had no idea I was the one behind all of it, but I had no doubt in my mind that once the dust settled, everything would come to light. It would be her turn to feel the weight of betrayal, to see how far I was willing to go to make her suffer as I had. I spent that entire day in a haze of planning, figuring out what my next move would be. I had thought about exposing her affair to her family, to her friends, but no, that wasn't enough. She needed to feel something deeper, something more personal. I wanted her to regret ever taking me for granted, to realize just how little her deception had meant to me. She had chosen Chris over me. She had chosen lies over truth. Now it was time for me to show her just how much that choice had cost her. That night, I waited for her to come home. I'd set everything up. The phone calls, the messages, everything was carefully orchestrated. She would never see it coming. I could already feel the tension in my chest. My revenge was within reach. When the door opened, Maya walked in with her usual bright smile, the kind that she always wore when she thought everything was fine. She didn't see the storm on the horizon. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice cheerful, as if nothing had changed. She threw her bag on the couch and walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my neck. She kissed me on the cheek, and I could feel the sharp contrast between her warm touch and the coldness I was feeling inside. I pulled away from her, sitting down on the couch and watching her with a careful, deliberate gaze. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and controlled. Her expression faltered for just a moment before she plastered on that same fake smile, the one I now knew so well. "About what?" she asked, sitting down next to me. I met her eyes, watching her every move, trying to see if any guilt would flicker across her face. But there was nothing. Nothing at all. She was a master of deception, and I had been a fool to trust her. "I know about Chris," I said, the words coming out in a rush, sharp and clear. I watched her body stiffen, her eyes widening for a brief moment before she quickly masked it with a soft, disbelieving laugh. "What?" she said, feigning confusion. "What are you talking about, Jack?" I reached into my pocket, pulling out the envelope Tom had given me, filled with the evidence of her affair. I tossed it onto the coffee table between us. "I know everything, Maya. I know you've been seeing him behind my back." She stared at the envelope for a moment, her face draining of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She glanced between me and the evidence, her mind racing as the reality of what was happening set in. This isn't what you think," she stammered, her eyes darting around as she tried to find a way to spin the truth. "It's not like that, Jack." I leaned forward, my voice steady but filled with an underlying anger. "Not like what? I'm supposed to believe that you weren't sleeping with him, that you didn't lie to my face over and over again. You think I'm some kind of fool?" She shook her head, her face pale. "No, Jack, I didn't mean for this to happen. But you did mean for it to happen, didn't you? You chose him over me. You chose lies over love." I stood up, pacing around the room, my chest tightening with the weight of it all. "You think this won't have consequences, Maya, but it will. It already has." She stood up too, walking toward me with a look of desperation in her eyes. "I'm sorry. Please just let me explain. I never meant to hurt you. You have to believe me." I shook my head, unable to look at her. "I don't want to hear your explanations. I've heard enough lies." I walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights. The night was dark, but in that darkness, I felt something shifting inside me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and making sure Maya knew she couldn't just walk away unscathed. She had taken me for granted, and now I was taking back control. Maya's voice trembled behind me. "Please, Jack, don't do this." I was confused. I didn't mean for things to go this far. But I didn't turn around. "You don't get to say that now," I said, my voice low and firm. "The damage is already done. And now I'm done with you." There was silence in the room. A heavy, suffocating silence. I could feel Maya's gaze on me, but I didn't look back. Couldn't. The truth had already been laid bare, and there was no going back. Her lies had shattered the trust between us, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. As I stood there, my back turned to her, I realized something. This was only the beginning. Maya was going to lose everything just like I had. And she didn't even know it yet. Chapter 7. Unraveling the Lies. The days that followed felt like a slow, methodical unraveling. Maya had tried to apologize, so many times. She would text, call, leave voicemails, even show up at my office with that same pleading look in her eyes. But I had seen enough. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses anymore. The damage had been done, and she had no idea how deep it ran. She didn't get it. She didn't understand that no apology, no gesture, could ever undo the hurt she had caused. And maybe that's what stung the most, the fact that she couldn't even grasp the magnitude of her betrayal. She thought her tears and promises would be enough to fix everything, but I wasn't that naive anymore. It had been 3 days since the confrontation, and Maya hadn't given up. But I was no longer the man she had once known. The trust was gone, the foundation of our relationship had crumbled, and now I was playing a different game. She came by the house again that evening, knocking softly at the door as if she were hoping I'd just open up and let her back in. But I didn't. I was done being the man she could walk all over. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I ignored the knock at first. My heart was heavy, the bitterness from her betrayal still fresh, but there was a strange satisfaction in knowing she was the one trying to break through now. I watched her through the window, standing there, looking unsure of herself. She couldn't even bring herself to knock again. She was standing on the threshold, hesitating. I was watching her slowly unravel, and it felt good. After several minutes of standing there in silence, I finally decided to open the door. Maya quickly stepped inside, looking desperate as she spoke. "Jack, please. We need to talk. I know I messed up. I've been thinking about it non-stop. I can't believe I did this to you. I don't want to lose you." I stood still for a moment, taking in her words, but they meant nothing. There was no sincerity in them anymore. Just a frantic desperation to get me back. She hadn't truly realized the weight of what she had done. She hadn't felt the impact of her choices. "I'm not interested in talking, Maya," I said calmly. "I'm done." Her face twisted with frustration, as if she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. "You don't mean that," she insisted, her voice trembling now. "You're just angry. We can fix this. We can work through it." "I don't want to work through it," I replied, my tone firm. "What we had is gone. It's been gone for a while now. I just didn't see it." She reached out to touch my arm, but I took a step back, rejecting the contact. "Please, Jack, don't do this. We can't just throw everything away over one mistake." "One mistake," I repeated, narrowing my eyes. "You didn't make one mistake, Maya. You made a choice. Over and over again. You chose him. You chose lying to me. You chose an affair." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." But I couldn't hear it. The words had become hollow. She was playing the victim now, trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her, but I wasn't falling for it. I'd been in her shoes, believing in something that wasn't real. And now I was seeing her for who she really was. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice steady. "Jack, please don't shut me out," she pleaded, grabbing my arm once more. "I'll do anything. Please. I love you." The words stung, but they no longer had the power they once did. I had learned that love, for Maya, had always been conditional. When things got tough, when the temptation of something better came along, she had chosen to betray me. She had chosen to lie. "I loved you too," I said softly, shaking my head. "But love doesn't make you a fool. And I'm not going to be that fool anymore." Her face contorted, the shock evident on her features. For a second I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she had taken from me. The trust, the loyalty, the years I had wasted on someone who never valued me. My compassion for her was gone. "I need you to leave now," I repeated, my voice cutting through the tension. She stood there, frozen for a moment, before her shoulders slumped in defeat. With one last glance, she turned and walked out of the door without saying another word. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was left standing in the silence of the house. I hadn't expected it to feel this empty, but in a strange way it felt freeing. The weight had been lifted, and I realized in that moment that I was no longer shackled by her lies. She had left, and now I was free. But I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It couldn't be. Maya wasn't the type to just walk away. She was going to fight for what she thought was still hers. She was going to try everything she could to get me back. But she didn't understand. Nothing would ever make things right. This was just the beginning of her reckoning. Chapter 8. The calm before the storm. The days after Maya's departure passed by in a strange, almost surreal quietness. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I went through the motions, work, meetings, the occasional dinner with friends, but all of it felt distant, like I was watching it happen from the outside, like I wasn't even part of it. Maya didn't give up easily. I knew that much. She still texted me, still tried to call, still showed up at my doorstep, always with some new excuse, some new line she hoped would get me to reconsider. But I stayed firm. I ignored her messages, deleted her calls, and made it clear that I was done. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about closure. About reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost until it was too late. The truth was, I had spent so long trying to make her love me, trying to prove that I was worth her attention, that I had forgotten what it meant to care for myself. I had put so much of myself into her, and now I was taking it all back. But there was still one thing I had to do, something I had put off until now. I needed to make Chris understand. He needed to know that what had happened between him and Maya wasn't just some fleeting affair. He was as much a part of this betrayal as she was, and he had to face the consequences of it too. I had spent the last few days gathering the pieces, putting everything into place. It wasn't enough to simply break things off with Maya. No, I needed more. I wanted Chris to know that his little affair had cost him more than just his marriage. It would cost him his dignity, his reputation, and whatever pride he had left. I reached out to an old acquaintance of mine, a private investigator, someone I trusted to handle delicate situations. He was discreet, efficient, and never asked questions. I explained to him what I needed, and he got to work. Chris had to be exposed not just to his wife but to the people around him. His business partners, his friends, anyone who could help him realize the depth of what he had done. But as I sat in my office late one evening, staring at my phone waiting for news, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the right path. Was I becoming just as bad as Maya and Chris? Was this revenge consuming me, blurring the lines between justice and bitterness? Before I could think much more about it, the phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I grabbed it quickly, the excitement bubbling up inside me. "Jack!" The voice on the other end was low, calm, but there was an edge to it I couldn't ignore. It was my investigator. "It's done," he said simply. "Chris is on his way to the top, but it won't last long. Everything's set in motion. His secrets will come to light. His business will suffer." I leaned back in my chair, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. It wasn't victory. It was just the beginning of what had to happen. But it felt satisfying in a way I didn't fully understand. "Good. Make sure it's clean. No mess," I replied. "Don't worry, Jack. It's all in the works. You'll see the results soon." I ended the call and sat there for a moment, staring at the empty room around me. I had been so consumed with the idea of revenge that I hadn't even realized how empty it all felt. It was like chasing something that would never bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. But now it was too late to stop. It was done. The storm was coming, and nothing would change it. Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Despite all the satisfaction I thought I'd feel, there was a dull ache, a reminder of what I had lost. I didn't want to be this person, the one who reveled in watching others suffer. But what else was there? What choice did I have? As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought of Maya again. Of the promises she had made, of the moments we'd shared, of the trust one had given her without hesitation. It was a hard pill to swallow, knowing that it had all been a lie. But she wasn't the only one who had lied. I realized then that I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself. Angry that I had let myself become so wrapped up in her, in Chris, in everything that didn't matter. But now it was time to take control again, to remember who I was before all of this. And as I drifted off to sleep, a new thought crept into my mind. Once this was over, once Maya and Chris were exposed, what was I supposed to do next? What did I even want anymore? Chapter 9, The Reckoning. The days that followed were filled with a strange anticipation. The quiet that had settled over me after Maya had left felt suffocating, like waiting for a storm to hit. I kept to myself, avoiding the world outside, letting the situation play out, trying to focus on something, anything that would distract me from the gnawing emptiness inside. But no matter how much I tried to busy myself, I kept coming back to the same thoughts, over and over again. The affair, the betrayal, the lies. They haunted me, lurking in the corners of my mind, no matter how hard I tried to push them away. Maya had ruined everything we had, and now she was paying the price. Still something felt off. I had gotten what I wanted. Chris was being exposed. His business was already faltering, and rumors about his affair with Maya were spreading like wildfire. It was only a matter of time before everything he had worked for began to fall apart, and I couldn't help but feel a twisted satisfaction every time I heard the latest gossip. But even with all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to be done. I had to finish what I started. Then, one evening I got a message that made my stomach churn. It was from Maya. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen of my phone, unsure if I even wanted to read it. Part of me was curious, the other part, much smaller, was afraid. Afraid that after everything, after all the hurt, she would somehow find a way to worm her way back into my life. But this wasn't about what I wanted anymore. This was about closure. This was about ending it all once and for all. I opened the message. Jack, I know I've messed up. But please, I need to see you. I need to explain everything. I can't keep living with this guilt. I never wanted to hurt you. I need to talk to you. Please. I stared at the message, my fingers itching to respond. I didn't want to give her what she wanted, but at the same time, part of me knew that this conversation was inevitable. Maya needed to see that there was nothing left between us, that all the words in the world wouldn't change the damage she had caused. I wasn't sure if I was doing this for me or for her. Was this my final act of revenge? Or was this my attempt to put an end to all the chaos that had erupted because of her? Either way, it had to happen. I typed out a quick reply. Fine. Meet me at the old cafe we used to go to. She responded almost immediately. I'll be there in an hour. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, the soft hum of distant conversations filling the air as I sat at a table by the window, watching the streets outside. The place hadn't changed. Same cracked tile floors, same mismatched chairs, same faint smell of old coffee. It was strange, really. This had once been the place where Maya and I had talked for hours about our future, our hopes, our dreams. It had been a place of comfort, where I'd felt secure in her presence. Now it was just a reminder of how far I had fallen. I watched the door open, and there she was. Maya, standing hesitantly in the doorway. She looked different somehow. Her eyes were shadowed, her shoulders slumped, and there was something about her that seemed broken. For a moment, I wondered if I could feel sorry for her. But I quickly dismissed that thought. Well, she had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. She spotted me immediately and made her way over, sitting down across from me. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with a mixture of shame and sorrow in her eyes. Jack, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say, but I am. I've ruined everything and I can't take it back. I never meant for this to happen. Please believe me. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. I'd heard this all before. You think saying sorry is going to fix everything, Maya? You think those words mean anything after everything you've done? Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I know it's too late for that. I've lost your trust. I've lost you. And I don't blame you. I didn't know what to do. I was confused, and I made terrible choices. You made choices that hurt me, I said, my voice flat. That hurt us. You chose to lie. You chose to betray me with him. And you thought that I wouldn't find out. But I did. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to compose herself. I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I was selfish. I thought I could have everything, and now look where we are. I've destroyed everything. You didn't just destroy everything, Maya, I said, my voice cutting through her words. You destroyed me. You made me believe in something that wasn't real. You made me feel like I was the problem when all along, you were the one lying. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I didn't know how to stop Jack. Got out of control. And then, by the time I realized how deep I was, I couldn't get out. I'm sorry. I stared at her for a long moment, my mind racing. Could I forgive her? Was that even possible after all of this? But deep down I knew the answer. Couldn't. Not now. Not ever. No, Maya, I said quietly. You don't get to be sorry now. You don't get to just come back and make everything okay. You don't get to walk in here like nothing happened and expect me to just forget everything. She nodded slowly, as if she expected that answer. I didn't think you would forgive me. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. Goodbye, Maya, I said firmly, my voice final. You need to leave. It's over. She opened her mouth to say something more, but the words died on her lips. Instead, she just nodded, standing up from the table. As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a small, fleeting sense of relief. This chapter was finally closing, and I had survived it. I sat there for a while longer, reflecting on the conversation, but mostly just reflecting on how much had changed. How much I had changed. I wasn't the man I was when I first met Maya. I wasn't even the man I had been just a few months ago. And now I had no idea who I was anymore. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let Maya's lies break me. Not anymore. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, The Final Act. A week had passed since my final conversation with Maya. It had been a week of silence, of reflection, and of painful growth. I found myself more often staring out at the world, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But I also found a new kind of strength in that silence. It wasn't just the absence of Maya's voice. It was the absence of the chaos she had brought into my life. And in its place, there was something that had been missing for a long time: peace. Chris, too, had disappeared from my radar. The investigator had done his job, and I had to admit, I was impressed by how swiftly everything had fallen apart for him. The rumors about his affair were now public, and his business dealings were under intense scrutiny. His once seemingly untouchable life was crumbling, one scandal after another. I could almost feel the weight of his downfall, and a part of me knew he was sitting somewhere, just like Maya had done, regretting everything but unable to undo the damage. But even as their lives began to unravel, I realized something. I wasn't happy with the revenge anymore. I had won, yes, but at what cost? I had played their game, and now, even though the scales of justice felt balanced, there was a hollowness deep within me that I couldn't ignore. I wanted closure. I needed it. But the kind that didn't come from watching others burn. The kind that came from moving on, from taking back control of my own life without the need for retribution. I had spent so much time focusing on what they had done to me. I hadn't realized how much damage I had done to myself. The truth was, I had been consumed by the desire for revenge. I had let the anger and betrayal fester, clouding my judgment and my happiness. Now, as the dust settled, I found myself asking, what now? What did I really want? It was a question I hadn't been able to answer until now. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the space that had once been filled with the laughter and conversations Maya and I had shared. It all felt like a different life, a different time. This house had been a symbol of our future, our life together. But now it was just walls, just memories that no longer held meaning. I took a deep breath, my fingers brushing the smooth surface of the table that had witnessed our happiest and darkest moments. It was time to let go. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of the real estate agent I had been in touch with for a while. It was time to sell the house. I couldn't keep living in the past, in a place filled with reminders of a love that was long gone. Hello, the voice on the other end said. I want to sell, I said, my voice steady. The days that followed were a whirlwind of packing, decision-making, and finally, releasing the ties that had bound me to my past. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant. But as the final box was packed and the last of my belongings were moved out, I felt something shift inside me. I was walking away from the life I had built with Maya, not out of bitterness but out of necessity. I had to start over. I moved into a smaller apartment, far from the place where everything had happened. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it was mine. Felt like a fresh start, a clean slate. I didn't need to fill it with the ghosts of my old life. I needed to fill it with something new. The first few days in the apartment were the hardest. I sat on the couch, staring out the window, wondering if I had made the right choice. But with each passing day, the weight of the decision lifted. I had made it on my own terms, and that gave me a sense of peace that I hadn't known I was capable of. Then, one evening, as I sat on the balcony, enjoying the quiet solitude, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, expecting it to be another reminder of work or some trivial task. But it wasn't. It was a message from Maya. Jack, I heard about the house. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can find happiness again. I stared at the message for a long time. It was the kind of message I had waited for. The one where she finally seemed to understand the damage she had caused. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but I knew I didn't need to carry her guilt with me anymore. I typed a response, my fingers slow but steady. Thank you, Maya. I'm doing better now. I hope you find peace too. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a declaration of love or forgiveness. But it was something more important. It was the end. The final act of letting go. I hit send, placed the phone down, and looked out at the city skyline, feeling the weight of the past slip away from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time I felt free. Maya and Chris were still living in the aftermath of their actions, their world spinning out of control, but I had moved on. The revenge, the anger, it no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had finally taken control of my life again. I had found the strength to walk away, to let go, and to start anew. And as I closed my eyes that night, the silence that enveloped me wasn't one of loneliness. It was the sound of freedom.